Union terrorism. Union-enforced work stoppages, payroll padding, low productivity, and kickbacks have cost the nation precious time in its efforts to build a missile system and more than double the monetary cost. Union violence against the Florida East Coast Railway has continued for more than a year because the railroad continues to serve the public interest and national defense with non-union employees who do twice the work of union members. Congressional committees have filled volumes with details about Harry Bridges' communist-dominated union controlling politics and the economy in Hawaii, and about other unions in all parts of the nation, terrorizing of whole communities, shutting down of entire industries by a few gangsters, beating workers to enforce union orders. Such union activities are commonplace because the federal government has made privileged persons of union officials, even those officials known to be communists and gangsters. That is a summary of my report on union terrorism. The full report after a message from my sponsor. In May 1961, the Senate Rackets Committee reported that work stoppages, union-enforced idleness, and low productivity on the job, padding payrolls by rigging working hours to require double overtime payment for less than normal work, have cost us time that can never be regained in our desperate struggle to complete a missile system, and have more than doubled the cost in money. Iron workers at Cape Kennedy, whose production is low and often unreliable, make more than the United States Secretary of Defense. An apprentice electrician, brother-in-law of a union official, got a salary equal to that of the Vice President of the United States. Elevator operators and unskilled laborers at Vandenberg Air Force Base earn more money than full colonels in charge of the base. Workers at missile sites make as much as $26,000 a year for doing jobs that could be done better by non-union men for a fraction of the cost. Unions get a kickback or work assessment on the wage of every employee, whether he belongs to the union or not, and employers are forced to deduct the assessment from wages. Contractors have testified that they could do their work better and faster and at less than half the cost if they could use their own union technicians instead of those specified by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. But government officials tell them to obey the orders of union officials in order to keep labor peace. In January 1963, members of 11 non-operating unions struck for higher wages against the Florida East Coast Railway, which supplies the great complex at and near Cape Kennedy. The company was already heavily burdened with excessive labor costs caused by low productivity of union workers and feather bedding practices. No law or contracts required the company to negotiate with the union, so the company temporarily ceased operations. Strikers' jobs were abolished. Non-union men were hired, supervisory personnel were shifted. The railroad was soon operating again, handling more freight loadings with 850 non-union workers than 1,200 union workers had handled before. Acts of lawless violence against railroad property and efforts to intimidate non-union workers began immediately. On February 27, 1964, 2 dynamite blasts derailed 5 locomotives and 34 freight cars, wrecking the main line of the Florida East Coast Railroad between Jacksonville and Miami. This violence was of the same kind that had been going on for more than a year, but it caused great excitement because President Johnson was nearby when it happened, 15 miles away, making a political speech. President Johnson ordered the FBI to investigate. The FBI has arrested an official of the Brotherhood of Railroad Carmen, charging him with being one of 4 men who tried to blow up a freight train near Vero Beach the night of March 12, 1964. President Johnson's Assistant Secretary of Labor, not mentioning union violence against the railroads, has severely criticized the attitude of Florida East Coast Railroad executives because, he says, they believe that neither government nor government-supported unions have a right to prevent free men from working at jobs which they choose, have no right to force employer discrimination against loyal and satisfactory workers in favor of men who have proved themselves undesirable, unreliable, and disloyal. Actually, events in the Florida East Coast Railroad strike have been relatively mild in comparison with union behavior, which has been commonplace since the federal government set union officials above and beyond the control of laws which apply to everyone else. During 1963, the United Mine Workers struck the Grundy Mining Company of Tennessee. Murders, shootings, arson, and dynamitings by Union forces provoked reprisals by company supporters. Local and state law enforcement took no effective action, primarily because the federal government has arrogated to itself a monopoly of power to act in labor disputes. The federal government did nothing, and the nation's press paid scant attention. One night in Oakland City, Indiana, Union representatives drove by the trailer home of Ronald Russell and fired 7 shots into it. One of the bullets struck Russell's infant daughter in the head. Russell's home was one of several that were dynamited and riddled with bullets in connection with a strike which the Union had called against the Potter Brumfield Manufacturing Company. The victims were employees who refused to strike against their employer. Leon Blackwell was a shop steward of the AFL Teamsters Local 574. He was employed by the O.R. Burden Construction Company, working on a pipeline project near Mexico, Missouri. Lawrence Thompson, business agent of Local 574, came around one afternoon and told Blackwell to put 3 union members on the payroll. Blackwell refused, saying, "We don't need them. There's no room on the payroll for them." A few days later, Leon Blackwell, driving home from work, was hailed on the highway by 3 men who had asked his help to get their car out of a ditch. When Blackwell got out to help, the men beat him with chains, knocked him down, kicked his teeth out, and left him lying on the side of the road. The 3 men were Union representatives, disciplining Blackwell for refusal to obey Union orders. In Los Angeles, a 14-year-old boy tried to enter his father's non-union bakery, which was being picketed by members of the Bakery Workers Union, trying to force employees to join the union against their will. Pickets hit the boy in the back of the head, knocked him down, and kicked him. The incident attracted no attention. In Paradise, Louisiana, 2 union members murdered 19-year-old Kenneth Peters, shot him 9 times because he refused to join their union. In late September 1957, members of the United Steelworkers, AFL-CIO, struck the Lone Star Steel plant at Lone Star, Texas. It was an illegal strike. The company had a no-strike clause in its contract and never did find out what the strikers wanted. Union officials disclaimed responsibility, saying they had not authorized the strike, though they did later admit advising strikers to stick together. Many employees in the plant, not knowing what the strike was about, tried to return to work after having been kept away a few days by picket lines. More than 1,000 union strikers jammed entrance gates to prevent employees who wanted to work from entering the plant. A reign of terror, which engulfed the entire community and lasted for weeks, ensued. The federal government ignored this raging violence, although at the same time, President Eisenhower sent a regiment of paratroopers to suppress housewives and teenagers in Little Rock, Arkansas. By early November 1957, Texas Rangers had restored law and order in the Lone Star area. Approximately 2,500 Union members remained out on strike, but the company, with a much reduced workforce of non-union employees, was producing at normal rates, setting new production records in some departments. Then the federal government intervened. The National Labor Relations Board settled the strike by forcing Lone Star Steel Company to rehire all strikers who wanted their jobs back, even though this meant firing loyal employees who had helped the company by taking jobs during the strike violence, and even though some of the strikers had been convicted in state court and sent to jail. In the Hawaiian Islands, the whole population is at the mercy of communists and Harry Bridges' International Longshoremen's and Warehousemen's Union. In 1952, 30,000 ILWU members staged a 24-hour walkout to protest a legal decision against Harry Bridges, who was under indictment in California for lying about his membership in the Communist Party. In 1953, Harry Bridges ordered his ILWU out on strike, refusing to load military cargo for Korea at a time when American troops were engaged in war, to protest a federal court conviction against Jack Howe, Bridges' chief lieutenant, for the communist activities of plotting to teach and advocate the violent overthrow of the government of the United States. In 1954 and 1956, Harry Bridges called strikes to protest investigations of communism by committees of Congress. John Burns, longtime Hawaiian territorial delegate to the U.S. Congress, was elected governor after Hawaii became a state. Governor Burns admits that he owes his political victories to Harry Bridges' support. And since he became governor, Burns has appointed known communists to important state jobs, among them Jack Hall. Congressional committees have filled many volumes with details on cases like the ones I have briefly mentioned, and worse, cases of murder, terrorizing of whole communities, shutting down of entire industries by a few gangsters or by a handful of union members already getting bigger salaries than they deserve, beating and maiming workers to make them obey illegal orders of union officials, embezzling union welfare funds, vice, corruption, illegal political activity, and the cooperation of employers who want labor peace. Workers themselves, rank and file members of the unions, are not generally willing parties to such union practices. They are the primary victims. Why? Why? Because federal laws and policies and court decisions have made privileged persons of the officials of monopolistic unions, even those officials who are known to be communists and gangsters. Next week, I shall give details about the federal government's support of union terrorism by making privileged persons of the union officials. Goodbye. God bless you. For documentation of this broadcast, send 25 cents to Dan Smoot, Dallas 14, Texas, and ask for 451, Union Terrorism. 6 copies, $1.